Hey teachers, Brother Judd here, and I've got a few things to help you with your lesson in 2 Nephi chapter 25. Now, this is a really important lesson, and it's a lesson all about the grace of Jesus Christ. Now, grace is something that if you grew up in the church, maybe you didn't grow up hearing a whole lot about. We're hearing more and more about grace and, being enabled by the power of the atonement of Jesus Christ. And it's something that we're a whole lot more comfortable talking about. But if, like me, you grew up in the church and a lot of your lessons, focused more on, what do I have to do and how do I keep the commandments and the do's and the don'ts and all that kind of stuff, it can feel like one's salvation is more reliant on one's own actions than on the grace and the atonement of Jesus Christ. Well, this lesson in 2 Nephi chapter 25, it really tries to teach our students the proper perspective on grace and how all of that works. So I'm going to let you read the lesson here on your own, but it talks about, has anybody ever saved you before? There's this great video here from Elder Holland, President Holland, where justice, love, and mercy meet. A brother saving another brother, and you can read through the activity all about that. But when it talks about grace here, especially in 2 Nephi chapter 25, verse 23, there's this phrase that I've heard interpreted a whole variety of ways. It says, For we labor diligently to write to persuade our children and also our brethren to believe in Christ and to be reconciled to him, for we know that it is by grace that we are saved after all we can do. And it's that phrase, after all we can do, that I've heard interpreted a ton of different ways, and some are more doctrinally accurate and helpful than others. Well, you don't have to go running around trying to find how it's being interpreted. Might I recommend President Dieter F. Uchtdorf to the rescue, where he shares a quote here about that phrase, after all we can do, and then also Elder Christofferson down here at the end of the lesson. He helps kind of talk about how we don't have to achieve some minimum level of capacity or goodness before God will help. And so my recommendation, my help for this lesson is to make sure that you have your head wrapped correctly around the concept of grace. Spend some time there with President Uchtdorf. Spend some time there with Elder Christofferson, because the relationship that our students have with God and understanding his grace is going to manifest itself throughout our students' entire religious lives. My father was the former dean of BYU religion, and while he was working at BYU, he really tried to tackle the topic of grace from a mental health perspective. My father has his graduate degrees in family science and counseling psychology, and so having worked as a therapist for years and a priesthood leader, a mission president, stake president, he's had a lot of opportunities to counsel with Latter-day Saints, and one of the things he found is whether in an ecclesiastical or a professional role, their understanding of grace really had a whole lot to do with the positive outcomes of their spiritual and religious lives. Now, I've got this article over that he wrote over here on LDS Living, and I will make sure to link it in the description to the video. But the article is titled, How to Let Religion Benefit, Not Damage Your Mental Health. And he tells a whole number of stories, but I wanted to share with you just a graph that summarizes some of the results of a long research project that he was involved with, and it has to do with grace and mental health. So he says here, the red bars represent the higher prevalence of shame, anxiety, and depression in the lives of individuals we studied who focused on their own good works, also known as legalism, rather than God's grace. The blue bars represent those who reported less shame, anxiety, and depression because of their experiences with the grace of God. The data from our study collected from 635 Latter-day Saints indicate that experiencing the grace of God has a positive relationship with mental health, and that an individual's legalistic beliefs, thinking that it's all on you and you just have to do all this work to win God's favor, would be correlated with decreased mental health because of the way these beliefs interfere with their ability to experience grace. Our research also supports President Russell M. Ballard's comment that some Latter-day Saints become so preoccupied with performing good works that they forget the importance of having a complete dependence on Christ. So, as mentioned before, really spend some time. If grace is a topic that you feel like, I know that we're supposed to believe in grace, but isn't it really all about me? Go spend some time with President Uchtdorf. Go spend some time here with Elder Christofferson. Try to treasure up in your heart this topic and importance of grace so that when you're sharing it with your students, it will come from a deep reservoir. That, like, I want you, anytime, we're teaching, if you're teaching a lesson on tithing, but you yourself don't have any experience with the topic of tithing, your reservoir is going to be quite empty, and so there's not much to draw from. However, if you have a long history of paying tithing and receiving the blessings that come from tithing, it's like loosening the valve at the bottom of that reservoir, and the water just comes out with tremendous pressure. And so with regard to grace, if it's something difficult to share if we don't understand the concept of grace ourselves. So a couple of, as mentioned, spend some time with President Uchtdorf, spend some time with Elder Christofferson. My dad, his article is good. You can check that out if you're curious. There's an academic version of it. This is the version that he wrote for Latter-day Saints, for professorial types, so Latter-day Saints here in the LDS Living publication. But we really are saved by grace after all we can do. And really all we can do is turn our lives over to God and say, God, save me. So I hope this was helpful. I hope it gets you thinking about, okay, do I understand grace? It's a topic that's going to be very important to your students, especially as we talk, mental health challenges are such a large part of society today, and they're hearing a lot about mental health challenges at school. And so understanding their relationship with God, understanding their part, understanding God's part, really important to keeping all of those things in their proper balance and proper understanding. So as always, reach out if you'd like some more resources or just to continue the conversation on God's grace. Always happy to interface with teachers either in the comment section or privately through email or a phone call. So God bless, take care, and I'll have another training for you next week.